In this video, we're gonna talk about how to use green screens as we talked about in the previous video. But this time, I'm also gonna show you some of the very basics of how to do animation in Premiere. We can do some basic animation, not as sophisticated as what we can do in Adobe After Effects, but we can do it much quicker and render them live mostly. So we're gonna start as we did before by importing some media. Double-clicking here in the Projects panel. And now you should have been able to download a file called Green Screen Animation. You can just import this entire folder here. And you can see this consists of the same three elements as in our setup video, where we set up our workspace into where we have the effects and where we have our workspace arranged in the correct way. Now what we have here is once again my colleague Vash, and you can see here I have tried to film him while he was trying to sort of mimic the motion of actually flying. So what we're going to do is we're going to start, as we always do, by selecting the video, dragging it down here in the timeline to create a timeline. And since we know that Vash will be in the foreground and we'll put something in the background, we just start out by dragging him up here in video layer 3. Now, being up here, we will then try to crop the video. So over here, where we have my sketching effects, I could of course also search for crop, but we know the cropping effect is right here because we often use it. So we drag it over here, go up into effects control, and we will just crop all of this camera equipment out of our scene. So we will crop to the left and crop to the right. Something like this. You can see we have Vash here now. It looks rather nice. Now that's just for effect, then try to drag in our twinkling stars background. You can see here we can double click on it, and we can see again that the entire clip of Vash here is actually only 14 seconds long. So we might just only select 14 to 15 seconds of this clip. So we just select the mark out here and drag the video down in video layer 2 below here. Maybe, yeah, let's just keep it there for now. So now you can see we have it in the background. We have Vash standing there. And as we talked about before, the easiest way to remove the green background is often by using the Alt key. So I'll find my Alt key down in the effects, drag it on top of our video, and go up until effects control up here, and I'll find the Alt key and try to figure out if I can, in any meaningful way, remove all of this. You can see, okay, that helped us a bit. You can use the preset of aggressive, move a bit more. But as you can see, as before, we need to go down into the matte generation and try to remove some more. We can fiddle a little around with the shadow maybe. Try to remove that. Okay, and actually did the trick rather well without reducing too much of Vash. And again, if it doesn't work, maybe it's because we should select another nuance of green. So try to fiddle around with it, and see if you can make it work. Now I think we have it. We have something here. We have Vash pretending to fly. Now what I'm thinking is that maybe we should want to sort of make it look like he starts in one end. You can see here in the end he sort of lands again. So maybe we want to reposition that. And we can do that by keeping him selected. Go up here on the top and just press the motion. You can see here we can actually drag Vash over here. We could also resize him. Say, okay, Vash starts here now. And what we want to make him do, is that we're going to make him sort of fly up into the air. So when he does this, we need him to sort of whoosh, fly up. And then we want to have him fly in an arc over here before he lands again here. Let's see if we can make it look sort of okay. What we need to do is we're gonna need to toggle some animations here. And every time we toggle animation, we press one of these stopwatches. So every time an effect has the possibility to animate, it will have this stopwatch. You can see we could actually have animated our crop. And if we'd done that, it would have sort of looked like when I slided the stuff here, you could have sort of animated this as a sliding effect. So every time we have the stopwatch, we can animate stuff. And you can see here, whenever I press the toggle animation, it turns blue, but also over here, you can see a small icon arising. If I press scale here, you see a small icon arises called a keyframe. What that essentially does is that it says to Adobe Premiere, at this point in time, our file will have the properties of being in this X and Y position and having this scale percentage of size. And then, whenever I change the position, let's say right up until the moment that Vash actually lets go here, right up until here, right, you can use the arrow keys to sort of, right up until here, I want to tell Adobe Premiere that he is going to be in the exact position that he is right now. And I'm also going to tell it that right here, he will also be in the exact rotation. He will be rotated in this way, so we will also toggle rotation. So at this point, he will be rotated 0 degrees. But then we move a bit to the right, and as soon as his hands reaches like this, we want him to have taken flight, we want him to be up in the air. And we can always zoom in a bit on our timeline here to sort of get a better grip of it. Zoomed in by just dragging this below. So right up here, now you can see here, we've added a new keyframe. And we've now set that up until this point here. We want him to take flight. So what I can actually do now is I can just select the motion and I can drag Vash up, and you can see now that creates an arrow here, some dotted lines actually showing our motion path. So what we can do is that we can make it so that he flies up like this, and what we now have is then we actually have him doing that exact motion. You can see that went really, really fast. Just select it down to half rendering here so the computer can render it. So we have him like this. You can see that was maybe a bit too fast, but luckily we can always take the keyframes up here and also drag this one a bit back again, zoom in and out here, and you can always select the keyframes and say, okay, if I drag this to the right, it means that it will take a bit longer for Adobe Premiere to do the same thing. So now you can see the effect is substantially longer before he actually flies up. And I can make it even longer. You can make it as a very slow descent, like that. But I think something along the lines of what we just did was fine. Something like this. And then when he reaches this point, we may maybe want him to also have rotated a bit. And we can always jump between the keyframes like this. We can press these arrow buttons here and say, okay, around when he hits here, we actually also want him to have rotated a slight bit here. So rotate like this. And then maybe when he reaches a bit further out, we will have him, again, move a bit more up, but maybe also have rotated even further. And again, moving him a bit. And you can see how every time that I do this, this arc of motion is actually being adjusted accordingly. So you can see now, we begin to have something resembling him flying. And you can see, okay, here he turns up, so maybe that's should make us sort of make him rotate a bit up next time. Maybe this was a bit too slow, so we just move the keyframe. So at this point, he's a bit up. And he goes like that. And the longer we pull him for each move, the faster he will seem to go. Now, if you can see here, he will begin to turn down again. So let's move him just a wee bit over here. And at the moment that he does this, we will begin to have him rapidly descend again. And maybe we will begin to, at this point, say, okay, here before, we then add a keyframe because we say, okay, he should have the same rotation as before, so we don't spend all this time making a very slow move, but at this point say, okay, at this point, we will want him to begin to rotate once more, like this, and then move in an arc downwards, like this. So again, make him move. Maybe he has rotated a bit more at this point, something like that. Let's see here. Move again. Oh, sorry. We made him move again, like this. And maybe he then begins to actually spin up again here. So at this point, we will make him begin to rotate more. So we actually have him sort of begins to do a motion like this. And you can see he sort of begins his transition here. So we move him a bit more and rotate him a bit more again. And over here, move him a bit more up, like that. And have the rotation once more. And now you can see he really goes for it. So this might be where we sort of make him descend completely. So da, 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 like that. That. Maybe have him go all the way up there. Maybe just do this a bit quicker. Because right here around, we want him to begin to descend. We want him to land again. So now we want him to, at this point, be there. And at this point, be there. So it will be a fast descent. And when his hands are around here, we actually want him to be back on the ground, like that. So there you have it. Now we can see the motion track here, and let's see. Pew! He's flying. It lags a bit because the computer is recording the screen while we do this. You can see him, he flies around, and then zoof, lands there. Now, the beautiful thing is, even though we have all of these different points, we can continuously begin to just adjust each one of them. And what I didn't show you was that we also have the possibility to right-click on each keyframe. So if I right-click one of these blue markers here, I can make a temporal interpolation. That essentially means that we can make what's called an ease in or an ease out. So sort of make it a bit slower in the end now. You can see the icon changed here. And you can do that with multiple of the different animations. It basically does that in the end here. We will have something, let's just move down a bit here. We will have it look like he actually slows just a wee bit down. And we can do that continuously. We could have done that here in the beginning, saying that at the moment that he actually began to fly, we could right-click on this one turn the temporal interpolation, say ease in. So we actually tell the software to say, okay, in the beginning he's slower than in the end, so it sort of looks like an acceleration. And you might do that continuously here. You might also delete some of the keyframes, saying, okay, here it was really just, it didn't work. You can see here at some point he began to slow down a lot. So maybe we just need to delete this one completely. So like that, so the motion becomes more fluent. And we could have added around in this, maybe make it look a bit faster here. So that's the basic. Even though it might seem time consuming to do right now, as soon as you get the hang of it, you can animate all sorts of things. And again, we've used the green screening effect here, so if I wanted, I could also drag the background layer down to video layer 1, and we could add other effects to the middle ground. Still being behind Vash, but still then also being in front of the background. So I've dragged my falcon here, so at some point this falcon, if I select that, that might be up here in the corner, and then maybe while Vash is flying, the falcon is actually also being animated. So let's say that the falcon is here, and at this point it is positioned and rotated and scaled at a certain way. And then as soon as Vash turns around here, the falcon will have flown somewhere around here, and maybe it will actually have begun to also scale a bit, so it actually looks like that it comes in closer. And then maybe as soon as Vash dives down here, it will have already turned past him like this and have been scaled way up in size. And again, we can use the different temporal interpolations here to say, okay, let's ease this one out and let's see how this one looks. We have Vash flying, and we have the Millennium Falcon flying too. And let's say at this point in time afterwards, say we want to smooth them a bit out here. And at this point, we actually just want the Millennium Falcon to be completely out of the picture. So now we have Vash flying here. We fly him up, and he's flying. The Falcon flew behind him, flies up, and he lands. Alright, so of course right now it lags a bit, but as soon as we go up, we press up in the file, we press export, export media, and choose a position up here with the output name. As soon as we then hit the export button, we should get something that is much more clean, much more fluent in its motion. We won't do that now. But this is the basics. We've been covering now how to use the Ultra key, the cropping, the layers, and the keyframes to animate some motion. Of course, we could have done various other things. We could have added transitions to our videos so that it will, we could add a dip to black here to both the background and we could have it sort of fade out in the end. And we could have played with the corner pins on our Millennium Falcon if we wanted to be really spacey. So I could have dragged some corner pins on top of it, and we could have shown how it would actually animate. So at this point it would be aligned like that, but at this point it might have skewed to sort of show this kind of, you can see here it actually needs more than my computer can do. We can see here what we actually did was that we made it look like though it distorted time. So they actually ruined. The video clip actually became distorted like this. So it actually looks like we did some space-time, timey-wimey stuff here. But again, that's the basics of it. You can manipulate this in different ways, and you can play along with it accordingly. So, and again, nothing you do here cannot just be deleted afterwards and say, no, you know, I don't want this to be like that. Just do it like that. So, there you have it. Next video, we're going to dive into something completely different. We're going to dive into how to use stop motion as an effect to create more simple animation.